A brilliantly bespoke Benz. I'm Jay. Steph stuck in Europe thanks to a canceled flight, and this is Modern Motoring. Welcome to the 2023 Mercedes-AMG G63. Let's start off with some numbers. So it is a 4-liter V8 bi-turbo, 577 horsepower, 627 pound-feet of torque, all through a 9-speed automatic transmission. The G550, by comparison, has the same 4-liter V8 bi-turbo. Power figures there are 416 horsepower, 450 pound-feet of torque, for a difference of 161 horsepower and 177 pound-feet of torque. Permanent all-wheel drive with a 2-speed transfer case. And just looking at it, if you haven't seen one before or you don't know much about it, Mercedes has had this around since 1979. I've been around since 1978, making this 44 years old, and you do the math to figure out how old I am. And what's interesting is it's completely made in the modern world for off-roading. It's got great approach angles and departure angles, 9.5 inches of ground clearance, and you can ford up to, I believe it's 27.5 inches of water with this. But unfortunately, I feel the majority, if not closer to the 99% of AMG G63 drivers will keep this on road. I hope I'm wrong about that figure, but this is completely a status symbol. It's a showcase of the very best that Mercedes can do. And Mercedes has made so many beautiful cars over decades and decades and decades. The Land Rover Defender is the closest thing I can think of as far as a comparison to this. It is absolutely not the same. No shot against the Land Rover Defender at all. But there's just something about this AMG G63 that is so well put together. And I know nobody's watching this to help them make a decision on buying one. If you want this vehicle, you are going to get it no matter which video you watch, which article you read. This is going to be it. But it's my first time in any sort of G-Class from Mercedes in the nearly 11 years I've been doing this, so it's a nice addition to have to the channel in case people are looking just to learn a little bit more about it. It does have a ladder frame construction as opposed to unibody, so it's definitely made for the off-road world, and it's a lot more capable than, say, a unibody, which is unibody. That sounded funny. Than a unibody, which is made more for reducing weight. Turns are a little on the harsher side, given all that Mercedes has done to really make this a luxury vehicle. Still has a smooth ride quality going forwards and low speeds, high speeds, but you throw in the height of the vehicle, as well as that ladder frame slash body on frame, and it's not perfect, but it's just something you live with if you do opt for this vehicle. A quick touch on drive modes. You have your slippery, individual, comfort, sport, and sport plus. Very easy to configure your individual mode. It's just right on the screen there itself, and you go through the command system. Sport plus gets really, really loud and really tightens things up. If you want to get to that 0 to 100 kilometers in 4.5 seconds, as Mercedes says, Sport Plus is the absolute way to do it. Shifts are nice and crisp, very, very responsive. And to me, the gold standard is Porsche as far as transmissions go. And I would put this up very, very close to what Porsche does as far as the speed of the gear changes, the upshifting of the downshifting. Yes, there's paddle shifters if you want, but if you really want to see how much the AMG can do, let the engine do all the work and just let it do its own thing. A quick touch on fuel consumption, and we are with a 100-liter fuel tank, premium fuel of course, and there's a 12-liter reserve tank. Now, here are your fuel figures, and they're not as bad as I thought they'd be. They're not great, but again, consider the size of the vehicle, the class of the vehicle, the weight of the vehicle. We're at 19.5 liters per 100 kilometers in the city, 15.5 on the highway, and a blended total comes out to 17.7. Not too bad. I'm at 18.1. I've not quite rip-roared this wide open, but I've done highway driving. I've accelerated. I've done some video clips showing what the audio is like of the exhaust system. And again, it's just one of those things that you live with. If you want this vehicle, fuel consumption shouldn't even be on any of your deciding factors as far as lists go. Now, to combat that, the Mercedes-AMG G63 does have cylinder deactivation. With that cylinder deactivation, cylinders 2, 3, 5, and 8 are deactivated when you're at your cruising speeds on your low weights. Obviously, you step down real hard, you put it in Sport Plus, you change the way you're driving, you change the weight of the vehicle where it needs more power to get up and go, then that cylinder deactivation does not apply. There's no proximity sensor for your key fob, so every time you want to get into the vehicle and every time you want to lock it, you have to use the key fob specifically. You can't just walk away from it or just tap your hand on the handle. So, quirky thing, I don't think it's going to make a difference to anybody. It just has that little throwback to the ruggedness and the outdoorsy and the off-roady side of things. The door locks are quite loud and you can absolutely hear them. Very, very pronounced sound. And that's just due to no sound deadening, dampening. And you can actually see the lock mechanism when you open up the door. Most modern cars, I think almost every modern car except for this one, has it inside of the door panel, and it's a little muffled and you don't hear it as much as you do here, but it's part and parcel for what the G63 brings to the table. I will say the seats are some of the most comfortable I've ever been in my entire career doing this. These just hold you the right way and you can position them and adjust them all sorts of different ways, but the seat bottoms are the perfect length for me. Here are some interesting facts and figures about the 2023 Mercedes-AMG G63. Mercedes says it takes over 100 hours of build time to create one of these. There's over 3,200 individual parts being used. There's 39 different paint colors, and each G63 that is made, or G550, it takes 6 to 8 liters of paint applied in 4 to 6 coats. Now, specifically what Mercedes Canada had done here for 2023 has given it the black mango paint. And that's just a very fancy way of saying it's a matte black paint. And usually matte black or matte anything doesn't do it for me, but I find it suits this specific vehicle incredibly well. Here's one of my favorite pieces of information. Mercedes says that through their G manufacturer system / program, there are over 1 million different design and equipment combinations. Now, if you want to break that down, it could be 500,000 each for the G550 and the other 500,000 here. Mercedes Canada has spec'd this with the upgraded 21-inch wheels. I think they look absolutely beautiful and sharp. You've got the red brake calipers as well. And just the overall look is just so unmistakable. I'm not a big fan of the rear lights being tucked down so low. I don't know where else you could put it. There's also a law that says you can't have any kind of lights on the rear of the vehicle attached to a moving piece. There are some finicky bits and some quirks here. So for example, the infotainment is not a touchscreen. You have to go through the command center here. And that command center is also a little peculiar. It's a dial, but it's also a small little touchpad. And the touchpad is on top of the rotary controller. There's an analog clock, but it's way at the bottom and completely out of your line of sight. And I get it, if you're having this beautiful bespoke vehicle. The vents are the turbine style, which we've seen in a lot of other Mercedes, but they match the circular shape of the headlights up front, checkmark 1, and the turn signals, which are mounted on top of the hood, just on either end of them, very, very G63, G550, G-Class thing, are the same shape as the tweeters here at the edge of the dashboard. So I always like kind of quirky design, things like that. A quick touch on the interior. It is a typical Mercedes, very premium, very high-end, beautiful materials used here. The dimpled edges of the steering wheel just feel so good. There's a center line. It's in black. I would have done it in red maybe, or just something other than the same color of the wheel. You can see the entire digital instrument cluster through the hole in the steering wheel. So that is also a great move, especially when you're doing off-roading and you need to see a lot of the information as to what's in front of you. Now, I know that kind of goes against my point of saying hardly anyone, if anyone, will take this off-roading, but if you do, it's an easy way to extract the information from the digital instrument cluster. There's no wireless Apple CarPlay, there's no wireless charger. You have your 3 lockers as far as buttons go on the insides with your vents bookending them. Hard touch buttons for most of your HVAC things. There is a main menu that you've got to dig through the screen to get as well. A quick touch on pricing before we wrap things up. So if you would like the G550, which is the base model, and I feel so bad calling it a base model, that's $188,450. And if you want what we have here, which is the G63 with the higher output engine, that's going to run you $242,000. And these are all Canadian figures. And I'm sure you'll add, different features and options, and back to that over 1 million different combinations of how you can configure your G-Wagen through the G manufacturer program. So definitely bespoke vehicle, definitely not for everybody. And there's a reason you don't see very many on the road. As far as a status symbol, this G63 is probably, if not one of the most recognizable in the modern automotive world. And yes, it's got a very long history of starting off over 40 years ago. And now you see it in pop culture, and it's a way to show off your wealth. At its core, it's made for off-roading, and it's completely wrapped in a very luxurious package. And that does it for some people. And I wish more people would take it off-roading. I wish I had the chance to take it off-roading. With that, I'll wrap things up by saying thank you so much for watching. We really do appreciate the support, both Steph and myself. Feel free to join our social media community. We've got all sorts of cool things going on there. And if you have any questions, let us know in the comments. We're always happy to engage in respectful conversation with you. On behalf of Steph and myself, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.